If you've been grinding through beat-em-ups lately like I have, then Marvel Cosmic Invasion probably already caught your attention. After spending way too many hours in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge and Absalom, jumping into the Marvel Universe just feels right. This game throws you straight into chaotic arcade action against some of Marvel's biggest villains, but the real fun starts when you begin experimenting with the roster. Every hero feels different, and thanks to the tag team combat system, picking the right duo is honestly just as important as learning the stages themselves. That's exactly why we put together this Marvel Cosmic Invasion character tier list. We're breaking down which heroes feel the strongest, which tag team combinations are absolutely ridiculous, and which characters might surprise you once you really learn their playstyle. We've also updated the list with Cyclops and The Thing from the latest DLC, while taking a lot of Steam and Reddit community feedback into account. And with even more characters arriving in fall 2026, this roster is only going to get crazier from here. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm ranking characters in Marvel Cosmic Invasion. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Rocket and Spider-Man. You know a fighting game roster is weirdly balanced when the raccoon with a grenade launcher ends up being more useful standing off screen than actually throwing hands in the middle of the fight. That is basically the story of Rocket Raccoon in Marvel Cosmic Invasion. The little guy looks chaotic, plays chaotic, and honestly feels like he woke up every morning choosing violence. His basic attacks reach surprisingly far, which already makes him annoying in the best possible way. Then you add grenade pressure, aerial pogo attacks, and assist support into the mix, and suddenly Rocket turns into that teammate who does not carry the squad directly, but somehow causes all the damage anyway. The funny thing is, people argue about Rocket Raccoon's ranking constantly. Some players swear he belongs way higher than C tier, and honestly, I get it. If you keep him on the field too long, things start falling apart pretty fast. Close range combat is awkward, and flying enemies make him look like he forgot which direction gravity works. But the second you treat him as an assist-focused partner instead of the main fighter, his value shoots up immediately. Toss grenades, call assists, get out, repeat. He basically plays like the annoying younger sibling who throws stuff from across the room and somehow wins the argument. Then there is Spider-Man, who somehow manages to feel both extremely fun and slightly disappointing at the same time. Moving around with him feels fantastic because his speed and agility are ridiculous. Half the time enemies are swinging at empty air, while Spider-Man is already somewhere else making bad life choices. His webbing attacks slowing enemies down is genuinely useful too, especially because successful dodges instantly refill his web canisters. That creates this smooth rhythm where good players can stay mobile forever, while constantly annoying entire groups of enemies. But here is the problem with Spider-Man. When you compare him to the rest of the roster, he just does not hit hard enough to stand out. Other characters simply have crazier offensive tools. Even his swinging attacks, which should have been one of the coolest parts of his moveset, barely matter in actual combat. Meanwhile, Venom is out there turning into a nightmare monster with symbiote shark attacks and rolling through enemies like a wrecking ball made entirely of bad decisions. Spider-Man ends up feeling more like a utility character than the superstar you expect him to be, which is kind of wild considering he is probably the most recognizable Marvel hero on the planet. Honestly, both of these characters land in C tier for the same reason. They need help from the right teammates to really shine. Rocket Raccoon becomes terrifying as a support machine, while Spider-Man works best when he focuses on crowd control and mobility instead of raw damage. They are not the kind of fighters you pick if you want to brainlessly destroy everything on screen in 10 seconds. But if you enjoy creative tag team setups, annoying enemy groups, and making the battlefield look completely ridiculous, these two can still be a blast to play. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Black Panther, Iron Man, Nova, She-Hulk, Beta Ray Bill, and The Thing. There is a certain comfort in B-tier fighters that people do not really talk about enough. These are the characters you bring when your main hero starts struggling and you quietly say, "Alright, your turn, fix this mess." They are not always flashy, but they get the job done in ways that feel surprisingly satisfying. And in Marvel Cosmic Invasion, this tier is full of characters that either hit way harder than expected or quietly carry entire situations without asking for credit. Black Panther is a perfect example of that precision-style fighter who rewards clean timing over brute force. His quick attacks make him feel almost surgical in how he moves through enemies, almost like he is reading the battlefield a split second ahead of everyone else. The movement speed is excellent, and the tackle assist is one of those underrated tools that suddenly makes ranged fighters feel like they are playing a completely different game. Even something as simple as throwing poison daggers adds pressure, but the limitation of only 3 daggers before recharging keeps him from feeling completely dominant. The biggest issue is his punch range, which feels a bit underwhelming when compared to the heavier hitters in higher tiers. Beta Ray Bill is where things get a lot more chaotic in the best possible way. Watching him fight feels like someone strapped a hurricane to a hammer and told it to solve problems. His fists hit hard, and Mjolnir doing its own separate damage turns every encounter into a multi-layered attack pattern that is hard to ignore. The hammer behaving like a homing projectile that can even rotate in place gives him strong control over space, especially in crowded fights. However, that power comes with limitations. He has to recharge his hammer after only 3 uses, and his slow movement speed often makes him vulnerable to interruptions mid-combo. On top of that, using a dodge instead of a parry feels like a missed opportunity for a character with this kind of presence. She-Hulk is one of those characters that looks straightforward on paper, but completely changes once you understand how she is meant to be used. On the field, she is all about raw damage, grabbing enemies and throwing them around like they forgot the rules of physics. But the real secret is her assist performance. Her basic attack assist hits extremely hard and effectively removes her biggest weakness, which is her slow movement, since assist characters instantly teleport to the target. The downside is that her on-field play suffers heavily from limited range and the fact that enemies can block her grabs, which reduces her effectiveness when she is not supported properly. Nova sits in this interesting middle ground where he never feels bad, but also never feels like the absolute best choice for any single role. His ranged attacks are strong and flexible, and being able to fly gives him a level of control over air-based enemies that many others struggle with. His level 5 passive also adds a nice layer of scaling by boosting range damage after using his special. The issue is that he is a classic jack of all trades. He does everything decently, but nothing in a way that defines the fight around him. Even his special ability, while useful, takes a bit too long to fully activate in fast-paced encounters. Iron Man, on the other hand, feels like a character built around rhythm. His dive punch area of effect damage clears groups efficiently, and his repulsor blast gives him consistent ranged pressure. The parry mechanic is where he really starts to shine, especially once his level 5 passive kicks in and grants temporary infinite repulsor ammo after a successful parry. Against projectile-heavy bosses like Hela, this turns him into a completely different threat. His electrical orb charge attack also adds a unique way to control space that fits his tech-based identity. However, outside of that flow state, his basic melee range feels clunky, and his repulsor system can feel restrictive until everything clicks together. The Thing is exactly what his name suggests, just louder, heavier, and harder to move than anything else on the screen. His cannonball jump attack is especially effective against airborne enemies, even if it can feel slightly inconsistent at times. He can grab and throw enemies, although not with the same efficiency as someone like Wolverine, which keeps his crowd control from reaching top-tier dominance. His charge haymaker punch is devastating when it lands, but the wind-up time means you really have to commit to your decisions. Defensively, his ability to block most attacks makes him feel like a true tank, but that comes at the cost of mobility and flexibility. What makes this tier interesting overall is how much these characters rely on team composition rather than individual dominance. Black Panther brings speed and setup potential, Beta Ray Bill brings raw destructive force, She-Hulk deletes enemies off the field with assist power, Nova provides balanced aerial control, Iron Man stabilizes fights through mechanics, and The Thing anchors everything with pure durability. None of them are perfect solo options, but together, they form the backbone of flexible team strategies that can handle almost anything the game throws at you. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Venom, Storm, Captain America, Wolverine, and Cyclops. A-tier fighters are where the game starts to feel like it actually expects you to think a little. These characters are not just pick and win options, they are more like specialists who demand you understand when to switch, when to commit, and when to let someone else handle the chaos. The funny part is that they are incredibly strong on their own, but the moment the battlefield throws something unexpected at you, you realize why team synergy matters so much here. Captain America is basically the definition of a reliable teammate who never really panics, no matter how messy things get. His homing shield is ridiculous in the best way, especially because it is the only ranged attack in the game that does not require any recharge at all. That alone already makes him feel unique in a roster full of cooldown management. On top of that, his parry mechanic gives him strong defensive control, and his level 5 passive boosting duo attack damage makes him one of the best support-oriented fighters in the game. He has great movement speed and solid melee reach, but his damage ceiling drops a bit in higher difficulty, especially when flying enemies show up and his average special starts feeling a little too honest. Wolverine is where things turn into pure aggression. This character does not really fight enemies, he deletes them at close range and asks questions later. His combo potential is insane, easily reaching extremely high hit counts, and his close combat range is arguably the best in the entire roster. The ability to grab and throw enemies adds to his control, and his level 5 passive speeding up health regeneration makes him feel almost unkillable when played correctly. The downside is that he has no ranged tools and struggles heavily against airborne enemies, and the fact that he uses dodge instead of parry means he relies more on instinct than defensive timing. Storm plays like she is above the rules of the game entirely. Her screen-wide special attack is one of the most satisfying tools in the entire roster, capable of clearing chaos in a single moment. She also has a parry, which gives her defensive stability that many damage-focused characters lack. Her aerial movement is excellent, letting her hover above danger while still applying pressure from above, and her shock-based crowd control makes group fights much more manageable. The trade-off is that she is not comfortable in close-range combat, and her Arctic Wind ranged attack is limited by only 3 charges, forcing you to time your pressure carefully instead of spamming it. Venom is pure controlled chaos. He brings some of the most visually destructive attacks in the game, especially with Symbiote Wrecking Ball absolutely destroying flying enemies and Symbiote Shark hitting both ground and air targets at the same time. His ability to grab and slam enemies also makes him excellent for crowd control and environmental kills. However, he is slightly slower than other fighters, and like several others in this tier, he uses dodge instead of parry. While he is still extremely strong, he does not quite reach the consistency or flexibility of higher tier characters, especially when fights demand quick reactions across multiple ranges. Cyclops is the newest addition to this tier, and honestly feels like a range specialist designed for players who enjoy constant pressure. His optic blasts are among the best long-range attacks in the game, and the fact that he can switch between close and long-range combat smoothly gives him a lot of flexibility. His dodge attack dealing contact damage is one of the most interesting mechanics in the entire roster, turning movement itself into an offensive tool. His ultimate optic blast covering the entire screen is exactly as powerful as it sounds, making him a major threat in group fights. The limitation with Cyclops comes from his lack of a parry mechanic, which reduces his defensive ceiling on harder difficulty compared to characters like Captain America or Storm. His special ability also depends on energy, meaning you cannot rely on it constantly in long encounters. Even so, when he is managed properly, he becomes one of the most consistent ranged pressure tools in the game. What makes A tier so interesting overall is that no character here is truly self-sufficient in every situation. Captain America needs damage partners, Wolverine needs range backup, Storm needs melee protection, Venom needs mobility support, and Cyclops needs defensive stability. This is where team building actually starts to matter, because switching at the right moment becomes just as important as landing hits. In practice, A-tier fighters feel like specialists you rotate depending on what the game throws at you. You are not just picking a favorite, you are building a response system. That is what separates this tier from the lower ones, and it is also what makes it one of the most fun to experiment with. Even though they are not perfect, A-tier characters are often the backbone of strong teams. When paired correctly, they cover each other's weaknesses so well that it almost feels like you are cheating the system, just with a bit more effort and timing involved. The characters in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Silver Surfer, Phyla-Vell, Ghost Rider, and Phoenix. By the time you reach S tier, the game basically stops asking you to think about weaknesses and starts handing you characters that feel like full kits packaged into a single superhero. These are the fighters you can realistically run through entire stages without constantly swapping, because they already cover damage, crowd control, mobility, and survival all at once. Once you unlock them through campaign progression, especially after reaching missions like Fort Galactus, the entire flow of combat starts to feel noticeably more controlled and almost unfair in the best way. Phoenix is the kind of character that immediately changes the pace of every fight she enters. Her special attack is easily the strongest in the game, not just for raw damage, but for how much control it gives you over the battlefield. Her flaming dash can be spammed in a way that turns entire enemy waves into combo fuel, which makes her perfect for maintaining high multipliers without breaking rhythm. She can also grab and throw enemies from a distance, which is rare and extremely valuable in chaotic situations. Once her level 5 passive kicks in and her dash and aerial attacks become flame empowered, she turns into a constant pressure machine, especially when paired with her parry mechanic. The only real drawback is that her range grab needs to recharge, and of course she is locked behind campaign progression. Cosmic Ghost Rider feels like someone designed the character with no intention of asking for permission from the rest of the roster. He is arguably the most complete fighter in the game, combining devastating short-range power with absurd long-range missile pressure. Being able to fire up to 10 missiles gives him some of the strongest ranged output available, while his basic attacks still comfortably handle both ground and aerial enemies. His chain pull is where things get especially fun, dragging enemies in with a Scorpion-style get over here moment while also generating bonus ammo on successful pulls. The only real debate around him is the absence of a parry mechanic replaced with dodge, which some players argue slightly lowers his ceiling compared to the absolute top contenders. Phyla-Vell brings a more technical but extremely rewarding style of combat. Her teleport slash using a throwable quantum sword gives her insane gap closing potential, allowing her to extend combos in ways most characters simply cannot replicate. Her downward slash is also incredibly effective for maintaining pressure, especially against grouped enemies. One of her biggest strengths is aerial mobility, since she can fly and juggle enemies while staying safe above ground threats. When you add her charge parry that triggers a cosmic counterattack and builds meter faster through her level 5 passive, she becomes a character that rewards mastery with overwhelming output. The only downside is that she requires more precision and effort compared to simpler S-tier fighters, and she is unlocked midway through the campaign. Silver Surfer is what happens when speed, range, and control all get pushed to their absolute limit. He is the fastest character in the game, which alone already makes him feel untouchable in many situations. His air combat is dominant, allowing him to shred through enemy clusters while staying completely safe at range. On the ground, his melee reach is still excellent, meaning he never feels restricted regardless of his positioning. His parry mechanic also synergizes beautifully with his level 5 passive, adding bonus cosmic damage to counterattacks and reinforcing his defensive and offensive flow at the same time. His special attack covers a huge portion of the screen, which makes him extremely efficient in clearing waves. The main limitation with Silver Surfer is not his power but his timing. Since he is the final character unlocked through the campaign, players only get access to him after most of the game is already completed. By that point, he almost feels like a reward for mastery rather than a tool for progression, which makes his impact more about dominance in late content rather than early game balance. What defines S-tier overall is not just raw damage or flashy abilities, but completeness. Phoenix controls space while building combos effortlessly. Cosmic Ghost Rider covers every range with overwhelming consistency. Phyla-Vell rewards high-skill aerial pressure and mobility, and Silver Surfer simply moves and attacks faster than most enemies can respond. Each of them removes the need for constant team swapping because they already solve multiple combat problems on their own. In practice, these fighters feel less like individual picks and more like fully assembled strategies. Once you are comfortable with them, the game stops being about survival and starts becoming about efficiency, style, and how quickly you can end encounters without losing momentum. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.